I also have really good memories of the Miami one, which was even smaller than this, significantly smaller. I think that was a really fun event. I think you're smiling because I think you got pounded in the finals in that one.
Why are all your best memories finals that I lost? Like Toronto, Miami? Like, is there something you need to tell me,
I
dude?
forgot that you lost in the Toronto one too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Hello and welcome to The Dive, driven by Kia, Season 8, Episode 18. We had our first week of best of threes of the LCS. It was a banger. Honestly,
First day was banger.
You didn't like the second day?
Second day was not a banger.
You were not entertained?
I'm not saying I wasn't entertained, but two teams got absolutely stomped.
All I'm saying,
2-0, 2-0, not even close.
that would have been the same thing with best of twos, but you could have had another series.
Another doubleheader packed in
yeah,
at the end.
yeah, you could have had three doubleheaders. You always know how many games you're getting.
Yeah, that's true. Does that make it better or worse that you know how many games you're getting?
I think better.
I feel like day one was actually really exciting because you didn't know how it was going to go, and we did end up with some really close series. TL took down Fly 2-1, and C9 beat Dig 2-1. But they were both pretty competitive series. What was your kind of like first takes on these teams?
I mean, I want to talk a little bit more about whether you like it if you know the number of games or you don't.
Yeah.
Because it's actually pretty interesting to me because there is a lot of science behind the dopamine system, and random rewards are scientifically more rewarding than rewards that you know are coming. Mm-hmm. That's the whole point of gambling, and that's the whole point of, any of those randomized deliveries. So honestly, that's the best argument that I've heard against best of twos and for best of threes.
Doubleheader is crumbling.
Doubleheader is goated.
Azael's loot box of games. Yeah. don't know if you're getting two or three.
That's the most cooked thing I've ever heard.
Game 3 might just pop out.
There you go.
So you're telling me if you could just tell someone, hey, we're going to get 6 games today, because I was feeling good because we got so many games, and they were good games. That's a bonus. But, if it's just, we're going to always have 6 games, or we'll have 6 games sometimes and sometimes just 4.
The expectations are low. You're like, I might only get 4 games today. I got 6 games!
But that doesn't
But then
if
if you're like,
that.
you're going to get 6 games today, you're like, yeah, I knew that.
Yeah, and I'd be like, yeah, hell yeah, 6 games, let's go.
Yeah, you already knew you were getting 6 games.
just doesn't hit the same.
It just doesn't hit the same.
All right, whatever.
The schedules were the schedule makers will definitely agree with you though, because it makes it so much easier for scheduling anything.
This is totally a tangent, but for some reason I just have to talk about it now. I always thought that there needs to be an upper bracket advantage for double elim, and I want international finals to be best of 7 1-game winners advantage, and I feel like we need that, because best of 7 one game advantage, the longest it can be is 6. So it's only like 1 hour longer broadcast day at maximum. And most of them are not going to be longer at all. And it actually gives a real advantage to winner's bracket. Because I think having side selection isn't enough for not having lost a single series.
Yeah, I'm just thinking back to MSI where we had days where we had to do 2 series, double best of 5 days. And now I'm thinking of double best of 7 days. And I'm like, if we ever had to do that.
Single best of 7. It would just be grand finals, single best of 7.
Okay. So it'll only be used
only for winner's bracket advantage for the finals, right?
Okay.
I'd like it. I think that'd be good.
Because you need a real advantage for going through winner's bracket. I always thought it was kind of bogus. Because it's like, you could 3-0 someone, and then they run the lower bracket, and they beat you 3-2 in the finals. You won 5 games, they won 3, they're the champions.
I will say, especially depending on patch, side selection for the first one is a real advantage.
But not as much as a full game.
Not as much as a full game, yeah, because that one's pretty guaranteed.
That's pretty good, yeah. Exactly.
For the side selection too, though, it's actually probably more fun if we do the 1v1 thing, like the shootout shots, where each team just selects one player to go play a 1v1, and that's for.
I think the coaches should have to 1v1.
Ooh, I actually like that too.
So every team would have like a ringer pro player coach who's they're your strategic coach who just practices 1v1s all day.
Yeah. Exactly. We see them at the beginning of the day warming up, playing versus their solo laners.
It could be really exciting, but I will say some of the 1v1s from All-Stars were actually really boring. like when it would be ones that are just like, devolving into just CSing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, or when people were doing like Grasp Caitlyn and stuff like this.
Oh yeah, I mean you can't be cringe. That has to be one of the rules.
It's gonna be a new mode though.
No cringe.
It's gonna be a side selection Ring of Fire.
Okay. If they add Ring of Fire and mirror matchups,
Yeah.
that'd be pretty exciting. That would be cool.
What do you think the best champion 1v1 is? Like the most
exciting?
Yeah, most exciting, most skill. Because some people say Ezreal, but that's super cap. Like that's one of the most
What
boring.
about like Lee Sin with wards and smite and stuff, so you can like smite through things, and I don't know.
He sustains too much.
Yeah.
The Yasuo ones, I've kind of liked those. The Yasuo ones that I've seen.
Lucian's
Riven, Lucian.
People say Riven. I feel like Riven ends up kind of just being one person starts winning the trade, and then they just chasing each other to death. You know
I
what
mean,
Like,
it depends. It depends if both are good at like stacking passive, comboing, and if they're both good, I feel like it's pretty fun.
Yeah. I remember we did Riven 1v1s thing, and it was like a Freak played against Viper. I can't remember what the advantage was, but it gave him some significant advantage, but we didn't think it was going to be enough, but then Freak just won because he just like button mashed and ran at him.
Yeah, what? Because the advantage was big though.
It was
I think it
significant.
was like a giant
It was-
item or something.
I can't remember if it was an item
I
or a
don't know.
level or what it was, but it was too much, and then it ended up being really one-sided, and then I was like, oh, we kind of made Viper look bad because it gave too much of an advantage to Freak. But I mean, 1v1s would be fun. 1v1s would definitely be fun.
Yeah.
All right, this is totally tangent, but yeah, first day of matches was really competitive. TL, I think everyone is looking at kind of like as the big favorite now coming in. It feels like even the pros are agreeing. They are kind of getting some respect now, I think, after having done pretty well at MSI. And I know Sven was talking about, like, obviously there was a lot of content this week. There was pros, there was the Sven Yawn thing, there was been a lot of stuff. But Sven was talking about how he felt like if you win spring and you go to MSI and you don't completely boom, like you don't mental boom, then you're just have so much of an advantage going into summer because you got so much additional practice, and like you should basically then be like almost guaranteed to win summer. Like, do you agree with that?
Well, also there's always this conversation surrounding teams that win and go to the international events of like the hangover, where you're tired because you've been working and playing all these games super high level at the international tournament, and again traveling as well all the way over to China. And so you have to play this whole tournament and come back. And then everybody else who didn't make MSI is just chilling. A lot of them, of the players I know, went on vacations for a while and then still had time to come back and practice and start practicing before Team Liquid got back. So my worry is usually burnout from the team that actually went to the international tournament. Because it's been such a long time since the other teams had, spring playoffs and stuff like that.
Are you really getting burnt out after one split?
I mean,
I feel like
it's definitely been a trend that we have seen in the past that has affected, a decent amount of teams. I'd say.
I feel like if you're getting burnt out after one split, you're like, I don't know, are you really cut out to be a pro player? Like maybe it's a hot take, but every time I've been on a team, I feel like breaks are the worst thing for your team ever because you just forget so much stuff, You just get out of the mindset of playing because most teams you'll see, they ramp throughout the split, right? You come in, your first weeks of scrims are some of the lowest quality games you'll ever see. And then, start of the split, you're shaky, and then you ramp up, and by playoffs, the teams are going to look as good as they're going to get, right? And so you take that, and then you just take a huge break, and you just start all over again. But why not just maintain your form and just keep building on what you've already made? That's what I've always wanted when I was playing. It's like, do we really need these huge breaks? Mm-hmm. I would say no, but people talk about burnout, and I'm just like, I don't know, man. We're playing League, dude. This isn't like a corpo job. Like,
it's funny because personally, I'm on your side, but I've talked to a lot of players that make this a priority, to have little breaks and to try and break it up. For me, though, when I went to MSI, casting it, and when I got back, I was terrible at League. I got back into solo queue. I'm like, I'm so rusty because over in China, I'm not playing on the China server. And so I come back, and that's just, a month, basically, of not playing. And I'm like, it took me a long time to get back up to speed. I came back, there's a ranked reset. I get in there, I'm losing my placements games, and now I'm dropping down, and it's like ruining my MMR. And I'm like, oh my, what is happening? I'm terrible again. I was gone for a month.
The only argument I could see for why it hurts the teams is because if it's one of those long tournaments, then you're playing on an old patch and you have to deal with jet lag from traveling. I think that part can hurt you for sure, but I think
if you're getting pounded and your team hates each other after, right? Like,
if you're getting pounded and everything's breaking down, sure, that can be bad. But I mean, any dysfunctional team is going to have problems, right?
Well, that I think there's more adversity internationally, right? Because if you're a team that is used to winning all the time, and I think this is something that a lot of players have talked about, it's like, you win North America, you win LCS, and you're the top dog, and you've been doing well in scrims, you won playoffs, you're feeling really good, and then you go and you just get absolutely blasted by, Gen.G and BLG or whoever, like every single game, then it can start to get really, really frustrating, right? And all pro players, everyone has an ego. So there can be, I think, that difficulty of like, is it my fault? Nah, it's not my fault. It's my teammates' fault. You know what I mean? Like, and then that can cause tension. That can cause problems. And I do think, as much as you're saying, it's like there's not a big benefit to having breaks. There's definitely a benefit to having breaks as far as, it depends how much you're grinding and how much you're playing. But if you're playing literally from when you wake up to when you sleep every single night, right? If you're doing like a 6-hour scrims, 8-hour scrims, whatever, and then you're going into solo queue and you're playing until you fall asleep and then you're waking up and you're doing that every single day, I do think that there is the diminishing returns on the practice. And if you do it for too long, you can be on autopilot, you can get burned out. And I think that can really, negatively affect people. I could see more of an argument for like if you wanted to keep up the practice and not take a huge break, like light scrims, or maybe you're doing less, but you're still going, so you're not losing all of what you've gained. Yeah, I can understand that, but especially for the teams that year after year are going to every event and doing everything, like T1 has been deep in like everything forever. It feels like, and those players are doing basically like an 11-month schedule. It feels like, every year.
Yeah, my point is going to be, though, that I'm not worried about that for Team Liquid because I saw them every single morning, and they were very happy to grind. Like, all of these players are more your type of player where they would not want to take breaks. They're always jumping into solo queue. They're always, like, trying to stay, like, warm, I guess, basically, would be kind of the idea for it. And even after the series that they were losing, in between series, like these bathroom breaks I'm talking about, going and like seeing the Team Liquid players after they're in between the series versus T1, and they're like super hyped up on these losses. They're like pissed that they should have won these games. This was not a team that was going to be like crushed from losing to good teams at MSI. So I already knew coming back, I was like, this team is going to be the team to beat. We all, everybody put them at the top of their power rankings and stuff for this reason. I think this is not a team that you're worried about getting burned out, like some other ones that people might be.
Yeah, and the big thing, to touch on Azael's point really quick, I like that idea of light scrims. That's kind of how something that I had thought is, it's not as much about the solo queue as much as about it's like the organized team play, because if you're a pro player, right, you have a totally different mentality when you're doing organized play versus solo queue, because there are some habits that are really good to do in LCS that won't really work that well in solo queue. Like a lot of it is sacrificing for the team and whatnot. But then if you play too much solo queue, you just have this like 1v9 mentality, and then sometimes your teamwork takes a hit and you go back into scrims and everyone kind of like forgets how to play together. So that's the bigger concern that I've noticed from taking scrim breaks. But yeah, I think like, lighter scrims, you could play less solo queue. I think that's fine if you want to chill a little bit. But I think, yeah, just the break from organized play, I think hurts teams a lot.
Did you guys watch Pros? I found it interesting. One of the things that Spica was talking about was kind of the inverse of what you're saying, and inverse of what most people I hear do say. So I was kind of interested on your take about it. Spica was basically saying that he felt like because he had played pro for so long that he was stagnating in his way of playing and playing more passively because he felt like that's ends up being the pro style. So he said he actually felt like not playing pro, not scrimming, and just playing solo queue actually made him better at pro, because he feels that now it's like reminded him that he needs to play aggressive, and basically it was like putting him in a different mindset. I'm not saying exactly what he said, but that's the idea.
Because I remember watching that exact part, and a key thing that he did say was he found himself in pro play playing too much for his teammates because, of course, you're trusting your teammates. But for solo queue, he was like, it reminded me how to play more selfishly and more for my own, win conditions. And he felt like that was a good thing. It actually, when I first heard it, it reminded me. If you remember the old couple years ago now Showmaker interview where he talked about a similar thing with one of his top laner friends, where he was like, "Wow, after playing pro for so long, I find myself like taking less risks as an individual, trying to like outplay and like skill check people quite as much." So honestly, like I think that is a cool thing, and for Speaker to directly talk about putting myself back in the solo queue environment kind of like reinvigorated him and like kind of maybe reignited this like more aggressive style or more selfish style or something. I think it's just cool to have that perspective and for him to be able to take a step back and realize that's what's happening with kind of his different experiences, so that then he doesn't fully lose out on the benefits of all the, pro play and playing for teammates and more controlled play, but can kind of recognize both worlds.
Yeah, I think there's definitely merit to that for sure. Probably not all one or the other. Yeah. Probably some middle ground there.
It's interesting, right? Because there's obviously people on one end. Some people are like solo queue is absolutely useless, and they barely play any solo queue as pros. Even some really successful pros like Aframu was famously like often in like high diamond or like low masters and stuff while he was like winning LCS titles. And didn't necessarily think that there was like a big correlation to like success in pro. But then you have other players, guys like Ole as well, who has always been really big into solo queue and like was top of solo queue in Korea and got rank 1 and has always been really high in solo queue in NA. And like he judges his picks based off solo queue win rates and stuff. So it's always just interesting how differently some players see solo queue and the value of it or lack thereof.
And it is always a big issue when those things are not aligned with players on a team.
Yeah.
Right now, there's a team that I talked to some of the players, and the first thing they said to me was like they're complaining about another player on their team not playing solo queue.
Oh, who was it?
I am not touching that with a 10-foot pole. But this is something where when people, and we always have these discussions where we're talking about, GMs and stuff, right? Because, constructing teams is interesting and everybody at home gets to play along, be like, oh, that's, that was stupid, this was good, that was bad. But like one of the biggest things with constructing teams is getting players that are going to be able to get along and also mesh, but also things like this where they have the same view on solo queue. Some people are like you're saying, especially North American solo queue, I hate to say it, is like probably has the worst reputation of any solo queue of major regions, simply because of ping and the spread out nature of our geography, but also one tricks and blah blah blah. Everyone's always going to complain about solo queue, but there are players that try and write it off and like, oh well, this isn't good practice or whatever. And then there's a whole bunch of players that pisses them off, and they're like, you're not working as hard as me, you're not trying as hard, and so that can cause further issues in the team down the line.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen that a lot, just different levels of motivation for players. I feel like you do need to grind those as a pro player. I know that when I was most successful, like early C9 days, it was just everyone perma-grinded every day. If like I would argue with High and anyone else who wasn't practicing. If we lost an LCS game, we got home and everyone wasn't immediately in solo queue, I would be like actually furious. I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, how can you lose an LCS game and then not just go grind? So, yeah, I don't know. From my experience, it definitely seems like the more time you put in, the more you grind solo queue, the better your results are going to be. But not always the case, 100%.
Yeah, and it's always a topic that comes up. It's pretty interesting. Yeah, it's funny.
There's players that do have success without being solo queue grinders, right? Like Licorice was, as another guy who's known more for doing a lot of 1v1s and stuff. And often you look up solo queue counts. I know at the start of this split, I haven't actually checked within last week, but at the start of the split, he was still like high challenger. He had a high win rate and all this. Like so, obviously he was able to do it. But when he was playing on Golden Guardians and he was considered like best in the league, he was like barely playing any solo queue. He was doing a lot of one-on-ones and things like that. Fudge is another guy who even when he was having a lot of success, wasn't really like a big solo queue grinder guy.
Which became a big topic.
It became a big
in
topic
the community because when you're not doing well,
all of a sudden it's not okay.
It is super easy to flame people. The other thing I would say with that, even if you are a person who takes the stance that solo queue is not going to help you that much, you better be doing something else with your time.
Yeah.
Like that time is not like all of a sudden given back to you. Pro player is your job. You should be reviewing VODs. You should be doing those 1v1s, putting those VOD reviews into practice, trying to learn from those specifically. And yeah.
ARAMs with honey.
I mean, you remember the Shy?
That's what I was going to say. That's
Shy
so
right famously was just like playing so many ARAMs. He's like, yeah, help my team fighting.
Okay, yeah. I guess like the last thing I want to add to this is I think it also depends what kind of practice you're doing in solo queue. I think is super important because I agree that solo queue, it is really important to be playing the game. But what I'll see, because there are some players that will be high rated in solo queue, but then have really bad competitive results. And it's if you have a support player on your team, and in LCS you're playing stuff like Braum, Nautilus, whatever, but then in solo queue they're perma playing mages. They're like Vel'Koz, Brand, just these picks that don't help you at all, or you have a mid laner who's spamming Ignite Zed in solo queue. I'm just like, bro, how is this helping you as a player in any way, shape, or form?
That was a conversation I had with Bjergsen years ago about solo queue and like what he saw the value of it as, and he was saying, regardless of what he thinks is going to like be what wins you the game in solo queue, he's going to do what he thinks is the best for his practice, right? And he would talk about that on his stream and stuff sometimes as well, where he'd log into a game and he'd be like, like if I picked Zed with Ignite here, if I picked Lucian with Ignite here, like I could probably slam this lane matchup, but like I could use some more Victor games or whatever, right? And I think it's hard though. That's another thing where I think it's really hard to not let the ego get involved and want to win. You know what I mean? And it's like, this is the good practice, but I probably am gonna lose to this guy, and maybe I don't really want to lose to this guy. And so I do get it, but it's that constant battle about like I always saw it in WoW as like I would rather lose to you online doing the thing that's like right, and then beat you in a tournament or whatever, right?
Yeah.
There was another funny topic that originally, what I thought you were going to be referring to, that popped up in pros. This pros was had a good amount of gems in it.
Yeah.
The one that I was thinking of was Tomio on it, self-reported. And he's laughing. He's like, I don't read patch notes at all, and everyone else was like, huh? And then he was like, well, I read the Jungle Champions, but that's about it. And
I felt like even that was only because everyone gave a reaction.
Yeah,
I'm like, bro has never read a patch note in his life. He's like, yeah, Israel seems pretty good, but I don't read patch notes, so I don't know why.
I don't think I would tell people that.
Yeah.
He's self-reported, and it's the only reason you calling him out on this one. That's already public content. That's not
he's really funny too. Like he's a funny guy, and I'm glad I saw a lot of the comments. People were kind of like enjoying Tomio on pros because that was really the first content that he's done for LCS. So it's a fun episode. It's kind of like the jungler therapy session because it's all the junglers of teams that got beat. Yeah, it was Spica, Contracts, and Tomio. So it's definitely a fun one.
Yeah.
But
junglers need each other.
Yeah, exactly.
No one else is gonna be there
no
for you.
No one understands you poor junglers.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah. Well, TL though played really well. I think overall, it was game one was quite close against Fly. That one was like really back and forth. Game two was the game where they got really far behind, like the pace of the Karthus, right? Like Inspire got really far ahead, and that game was kind of like pretty taken over.
Yeah, their level 1 was really good, and then he also got early money, and the whole time
he kept getting so many kills.
We're watching this, we're talking about, we're like, this Karthus is gonna steamroll the whole game, because that's what happens now with these types of champions, especially Karthus. I mean, you say these types of champions. Karthus is the iconic AP speed clear champion because you also have the global ultimate, but when a champion like that gets ahead,
they just get more ahead.
And jungle experience got increased on camps, so it's even more punishing than it has been for the last few patches. It's really hard to deal with because he's speed clearing, plus he's affecting all of your enemy health bars.
I feel like Zyra's kind of like that sometimes too. Zyra's clears so fast. If Zyra gets ahead,
if you're AP,
I love playing Zyra.
It gets so annoying.
There's so many APs right now that are turbo clear. by the way, I don't know. We'll talk about patch next week, but already like there's patch notes coming out.
Yeah,
where
Carthus
like,
got some fat nerfs.
they're specifically nerfing some of the AP champions that like are at the very top, but there's a bunch under that are all mega clearers now because they put in Faded Ashes and it does all this bonus damage to monster camps. So. Lilia, Brand, Morgana along there with Zyra. Like, there's so many.
Yeah.
Karthus and Talia are definitely like the tallest blades of grass, I guess.
Yeah.
that are gonna get chopped, but
Dude,
it's a bunch.
Yeah, in that Liquid series, one thing that is kind of interesting to note is that they were still kind of doing their classic Team Liquid style that we saw last split. As far as their picks go, they were having Umpty and Impact both like doing the double tank thing. They weren't really playing the carry junglers.
ADC mid.
Yeah, the double AD carry type thing. So, I mean, it's interesting to see them still doing that. And I felt so bad for Impact watching those first 2 games. He was playing Zac and just literally having the worst Zac game ever. Not necessarily his fault, but like the first game, he almost had no kill participation for like the first 30 minutes of the game. He barely got some at the end, and then the next game he was
getting 4-man dove and stuff.
Yeah, well, the second game he was like level 1 to level 5 Skarner, just something completely unplayable. But if there's any top laner I want in that situation, it's Impact, because he's not getting tilted about it. He's just like he's still locked in. So it was pretty cathartic for him to get rumbled in Game 3. I felt real bad for him.
And then Game 3, they absolutely blasted them. Kind of curious, what was your guys' take on Quad? Because there's been a lot of talk about, Quad and like, okay, is he a downgrade? Is he not a downgrade? Is his play style going to fit FlyQuest more? The vibe's going to be better, so they're going to do better. I was of the opinion that this was just going to be a downgrade. Like, I mean, not that he can't get there, but I mean, Jensen played really well in the split last year, right? He's 13 All-Pro. I definitely thought he was a big reason that they won a lot of their playoff series. So I was kind of expecting this to be a downgrade. I didn't think he looked bad, by any means. He did have a couple kind of oopsies where he got solo killed in kind of a silly way by APA, but his ASOL game was pretty solid. Felt like he got going a little bit.
From my perspective, it's a really difficult position to be in for Quad, so I commiserate with him pretty heavily. But in a situation like this, you have to have one standout game where you do something, super, super well, because everyone's going to already public opinion super heavily against FlyQuest because of
they're the villains all of a sudden.
The outspoken interviews from Brippo and Inspired, and a lot of the league starting to turn against this like infamous organization now.
All the pros, and it's interesting. Like all the pros are like, screw FlyQuest, we gotta take him down.
And so everyone's gonna have in their mind, well, Jensen probably would have done this better or done that better, or and so you kind of have to overcome what people already have in the back of their minds, because Jensen was really good, except for the series when they stuck him repeatedly on Annie and kind of forced him into this thing. And so, like, you're coming in a pretty tough situation where public opinion's turning against you, and there's a lot of pressure on you. So I really felt for him, but there wasn't any big kind of like cleansing moment where you're like, oh man, really, sick play or whatever, like the whole series. I'm not going to lay on a bunch of, trash or criticism on him.
I thought it was kind of just
it was okay, yeah. But in order to have like a positive one, you were going to have to do a lot of work to have people be like, wow, such a great move getting rid of Jensen. And yeah, that did not happen.
Yeah, it's also, just one series where I think the whole Jensen thing is, I kind of understood from FlyQuest's perspective why they would want to make a swap. And I think Jensen played well. I think he's a really good player. I think that his playstyle clashed with Inspired super hard. And I empathize with Inspired a little bit. Obviously, like he's kind of L9 toward his teammates. He should be nicer with his review. But at the same time, when you're put into like that leadership position on the team, especially as jungle, there's a lot of responsibility that falls on you. So you have to be, pretty strong-willed. You have to be strongly opinionated about how to play the game, or it's just not really going to work too well. So I kind of get where he's coming from there. And if it's just he could not see eye to eye with Jensen, then something would have to change, right? Like one of them would have to change their styles, and it felt like they kind of tried to do that. Jensen was playing Annie, even though he probably didn't think it was that good. Inspired was playing tanks, even though he probably didn't think it was that good. So I think when you have that mismatch, it's going to be really hard, even if both players are good. So I kind of get why they went their separate ways. As far as quad, it's too early to say, because right now, especially the mid meta is so weird. It's just kind of like Corki Tristana handshakes. In this series, Umpty was just playing Maokai Sejuani and ganking mid a ton. So, it's going to be kind of hard for quad. Inspired was playing carries every single game, Kindred, Karthus, and Italy. So I think it's going to take more time to see.
Yeah, I mean that's what it all comes down to. Like, this is not going to be a snap fix. That's basically the data we have, is that okay, we for sure know that this is not solving all their issues instantly, and this is not going to be a quick thing. They're going to have to build into it.
It's interesting because Quad could maybe have a similar mindset or whatever, and I don't have a lot of insight into that other than I was told that he had a more similar mindset to the way they wanted to play. But, when I was kind of doing some prep on Quad, I asked some of the NACL guys, like, okay, show me some of his best games, and I'll watch some of the best games. Like, all the best games people were showing me were team fighting, playing control mages, And it's like, you're just Jensen then, right? And then I was like, oh, like, is this what he mostly did? And then you look at his career, and it's like, you compare his career champions to like what Jensen's are. It's like, okay, his top 5 most played champions in his career: Orianna, Syndra, Cassio, Victor, Azir, right? Jensen's Orianna, Azir, Syndra, LeBlanc, Cassio. It's like, it's 4 of the 5 same champions, except Jensen has the more aggressive one with LeBlanc. And it's like, he doesn't have nearly as many games and stuff, but I just found it interesting that people were saying, oh, like, he's more aggressive. And you can play a control mage in that style, or you can, want to move more and roam more. And it's not as though you both play Orianna, you have to play it the same way or the same style. But I just found it was interesting that it was like this guy that, that they're replacing Jensen with, at least champion pool wise, is kind of like Jensen.
Well, they also had the video where they specifically said, Quad wants to play Inspired's
style,
jungle style. Yeah. So they, whether it's like, champion pools are similar, having the buy-in from the player. And it's going to be easier to get that buy-in from academy player that does get promoted up. I think is the main goal. That's what
it'll just be
I
interesting.
believe Papa Smithy or something was.
Because if you play those kind of champions, it's like you can't move until you push. Like you can't just be dropping waves all game as Azir running. You know what I mean? Like, I mean,
Tristana though, like playing Tristana like this is like, oh, we're gonna have AP godlike clearing jungle and Tristana and try and push and move and stuff like that.
It's definitely a 2-part thing though, because in order to play mid aggressively, you do need to work with your jungler, right? Because that's pretty much always been the relationship between jungle and mid. Is like, if mid wants to play aggressive, you need to have your jungler at least be able to match their jungler when they come to the lane, or punish their mid laner if they're just hard disrespecting with no vision or something like that. You need to play together, get a vision control. I think that there's expectations that each role has for the other one. And so if you want a mid laner who plays aggressive as a jungle, you need to be able to cover them. But at the same time, if you're the mid laner and you want your jungler to be covering and playing with you, you also have to do stuff with him afterwards. Like, when you get that priority, you get that push, don't just sit in lane trying to take place and just be giga greedy. You got to move around with your jungler now. So being able to find that dynamic where it really works is tricky. It's hard. Both people need to be able to sacrifice a little bit to work for the greater good. And, we'll see who can do it best.
It's always been a symbiotic relationship. And I have always been of the opinion, super biased jungle perspective, but I think that jungle mid duos are stronger than bot lane duos.
Like solo queue?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, like, you can completely run the game, whereas bot lane duos, you can turbo stomp bot lane, and to be fair, 80 carries in bottom lane is very critical to how you win League of Legends games now. But for solo queue, I just feel like there's so much flexibility with mid lane jungle duos, and then top laners, sorry, you don't really have a duo.
Yep. I guess I just found it interesting that like after all this talk about like vegan Jensen, passive Jensen, game 1. Kindred Azael, game 2, the only one they won, Karthus Corki. It just wasn't what I expected. Not saying it's bad or wrong, just it wasn't what I was expected after all that talk. I thought they were going to try to come out and like really play more aggressive in that way. But anyway, was definitely an interesting series. FlyQuest obviously at least made it competitive, but TL did win. C9 Dig was the other series on the first day. My kind of like first impression, I guess, of C9 was that I felt like they kind of still had the same problems. They were still making kind of like mid-game mistakes, and it didn't really look like they were a different team, which I found a little bit concerning. You know, Dig has a lot of big-name players, but obviously, as we all know, they're doing really poorly in scrims. Speak even said that they're doing a little bit better, but they had been winning literally 0 games a day in
now
scrims.
Now we win a couple.
And he said, now we win maybe 1 or 2, and that's them doing better. So
that's the first time anyone's ever said they're not winning all their scrims.
And Contract said it was the same, and he's like, yeah. And then she goes, yeah, our best scrim day was against you guys. So that was their like 1 or 2 games. But yeah, I didn't think that C9 looked like they had fixed a lot of their issues.
Yeah, I mean, if this was a best of 1, C9 would have been looking.
Give us the insight, Meteos. Give us the insider take.
Yeah, because
I don't have
Sven popped off it. Sven Jensen both had really good games in the first game. I think it was the Lethality Varus and then the Talia game.
Yeah.
They both did really, really well in game 1. And Cloud9 got kind of slapped.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Nidalee epidemic is going around in full force so far. You know, pretty much everyone in NA so far who's picked Nidalee has done that thing where you look turbo useless. And, you know, I want to reserve judgment on it a little bit because, you know, last split, specifically me, was going really hard on like a Lucian Nami, right? Because it's something that looks really good other places. Here, it's not quite working. So I want to give pause for a second and be like, you know, okay, is Nidalee actually bad? Or maybe people aren't playing it correctly. Maybe the teams aren't playing with it correctly. Maybe it's not being picked in the right situations. And I think it's a little bit of that last one because, I mean, Nidalee, she has her strengths. But I think that if you just... Because a lot of teams are picking her early in the draft, which I don't really understand. I think... to me, Nidalee's role is kind of being this really, really strong level 1 bully who can just get you the jungle start that you want. And then she's got, you know, fast clearing, and she's kind of anti-poke. If you're up against a poke comp, like the ability to like throw spears and heal your teammates can definitely swing the balance of, you know, who's got the better range poke type stuff. So I think she's good in those situations. But, you know, if you look at the game Blabber played, you're playing Nidalee into like Vi, Poppy, Nautilus. Their entire team can one-shot you, which was happening over and over. And so I don't think Nidalee is this, you know, super versatile, pick any type of game champion because, yeah, you know, you don't have CC. If she falls behind, she's kind of useless. So I don't think the champion's horrible, but I think maybe she's just not getting picked in very good situations.
It's a champion where I feel like there's a class of champions in League of Legends, and you know there are a lot of them that are junglers, but some AD carries and stuff too, where you pick this champion, and I feel like their expectations on you just are so much higher than if you pick any other champion in a lot of cases, and you're like, well, all right, fine, you could pick Nidalee, but if you watch the Canyon games where he's picking Nidalee, he's stealing away camps. He's getting lots of early kills. Like, there's so much that you have to do. It's like almost taking on another half job when you pick this champion. You have a lot that you have to live up to to make it worthwhile. And there are things that you can pick with it that make it way better. Not just the enemy team you're looking at, but like if your opponents have easy stuns to set you up, obviously that's going to be way better. So you can hit your spears, lots of other AD threats to balance it out, so you're not super AP heavy, all these things.
Yeah, another thing I think worth noting with the Canyon Nidalee pick is when he first brought it out, it was in a situation where the opponent had a Kali. And I did they have something else that needs to be revealed? I'm not sure, but they had at least a Kali. And, you know, one of Nidalee's strengths is she can reveal. Both her traps and her spear will reveal stealth champions. So it can be good for those situations. So I don't know. I think people just need to stop picking her as if she's some unstoppably broken champion because, like, you know, you can Smurf solo queue with her. Because, you know, in the wrong situation, she's not very useful.
It was definitely interesting, right? Because it's obviously been getting played in LCK. It's like a 40% win rate in LCK. You know, like everyone's like going to talk about Canyon when they talk about Nidalee and some of these top players. In LPL, it's actually doing pretty well. It's like over 50%. In LEC, it got played one game, it lost. In LCS, it lost every game it played. So it's really only doing well with like a select few players, and then LPL, where they scrap a lot, and you can kind of maybe understand why it would be more successful there. But it was also really interesting to me coming into this first week and just seeing how different the takes on what's strong and what's weak different teams were, right? You talked about how TL is playing, double tank top, and then we have teams that are like, okay, it's going to be Nidalee and it's going to be, power clear junglers, and then we have people who are letting Skarner through, and other teams that are like, Skarner is the most OP thing in the whole game, right? Like, which I'm of the opinion that this is the best champion in the game.
Let's take a break and just be like, all right, we got to talk about this Shopify game. Revan, what is up? They did the salty run back, letting the Skarner through twice, and they just got blasted with it back to back. And Nick and Nero Smith has the easiest first coaching job of his life. And what's the view on that salty run back that we had on the second day with the Shopify series?
I think playing into
Skarner
Skarner is a good
troll.
idea. I think he's just
So troll.
he's too strong. He's especially top lane. So initially when Skarner got reworked, I was mostly thinking of him as a jungler, right? Because that's where he's been the whole time. But I actually think as this rework has landed, he's a way better top laner just because, his W has 2 or 3 times as much range as it probably should. It's just a crazy poke tool. And he's just so tanky and has crazy kill setup. So playing him top makes a lot of sense. His jungle, his dueling and his clear is not actually particularly good. So yeah, he's an incredibly good top laner, and everything his kit does is just so skewed toward being really good for competitive, right? He's hard to punish. You're not really going to dunk on him in lane. He'll go even or win most lanes, I would say. Doesn't really need to be ahead to be useful, and then he had, his E and his R can just single-handedly win a game if you just hit a really clutch one.
Decent wave clear as well, because the W and the Q, obviously both AoE. He's really hard to stop on flanks when he's playing from top lane because you can be behind a wall and then start your flank through the wall with your E and stuff, right? It's harder to ward him out. You don't have to have a perfect ward directly behind them. He can come from so many different angles. Who was it? Was it the Immortals game? Was it Castle that did the showcase? You can do the combos where it's you E someone and then you R them, but it's they're so you R them and then you can still E them after, even though they're behind you. Because the hitbox on the E is really big. You can scoop them up and pull them in with you. We saw that showcase. So it's a really strong competitive pick, and I feel especially when we have some of these other champions in the mix that are really fragile and depend on their mobility, Skarner is kind of such a strong answer.
Yeah, I mean, also to your point about being better for top lane, the super weak nerfs that they did in this patch to Skarner were reducing base stats and then compensating by buffing up some of his per level stats. For the health as well as the health damage percent. So it just made him even more top lane. I know he's slated for another round of nerfs on the coming patch next week.
I think there was some big ones, his mana was getting super hit, if I recall.
So hopefully next patch it'll be brought back under control.
I can't remember exactly what the changes were, but my read on them was they were trying to force him back in his jungle. Because it was if you hit mana really hard, they already did the mana nerf before, but then people were I could just build a tier or whatever, and then it's fine.
Fimble Winter just is already a mega build, so
exactly. So I think there was even more pretty significant mana nerfs. So it'll be interesting to see if that does knock him out. But either way, Cloud9 I felt kind of still had some of their same issues. Dignitas, I mean, the first game they looked really good, and then they kind of got slammed the next two. I don't really know where I think Dignitas is going to end up, honestly. The more I hear about them doing so bad in scrims and everything, it kind of makes me a little bit nervous. But yeah, I don't know. How did you guys think of Dignitas first week? Did either you have them very high? I know I had them 5th.
I had them.
Kobe had them 5th. Did you?
I think I had them 4th.
Okay.
Maybe, I don't remember. Somewhere around there. I remember the middle rankings were all really close for me.
Yeah.
I thought I would say maybe above expectations, just because you have so many players coming off of big breaks. But I didn't think they did bad at all. I think for a team that hasn't played together, going up against Cloud9, which Cloud9's been up and down. I wouldn't say they're the best team right now, but they're definitely a good team. They're a team that you have to play well against to win it. And I didn't think Dig did bad. I think they showed some promise, and they have room to improve.
Yeah,
Sven and Jensen look pretty good.
Yeah, I actually had pretty low expectations for
Week 1
for Dignitas because, like we said during the power rankings, I was like, well, this team, I'm gonna put them low because a bunch of their players have not played in a long time, right? Haven't had competitive and haven't had that much time to get back together. So I expected it to be a slow start. And this was like kind of about what I expected from them. Maybe even a little bit better, honestly, because I had pretty low expectations for them immediately coming back. And there were some good, individual moments, and especially in the first game. So,
how about the Thanatos debut? Because obviously there was like a lot of hype around him. Felt like he was fine, but again, didn't really like stand out at all.
Yeah, I don't think it was his best showing. I don't think he would have been particularly happy with his performance. I do think he started ramping toward the end of the series. Like, his Renekton game actually started real slow. Wasn't he like 0-3 at one point or something like that? And then he built an Eclipse. And, we've all seen the Renekton turbo sprinting it, especially on C9. Like, C9's had several Renekton Gigafeeders over the years. But he actually managed to avoid that, and he was super useful on Renekton, which is rare, right? Especially like looking what he's playing against, like Jack, Sejuani, Braum, just all these tanks.
Yeah.
So I think being able to be useful in that situation kind of, is a nice silver lining, because it for sure wasn't his best performance. Like, he had some Camille misplays in his Camille game, which it's a champion he's known for. He's really good at it, but first time playing on the stage in a new region, speaking a different language. He's young. I think he needs some time for sure, but definitely not like a Poggers moment debut.
Yeah. I felt like Lurs was kind of giving them the hands in the first game too, with the Poppy and the Cassante. So I mean, it's interesting though, right? Because like I've heard so much positive stuff about him that I wasn't sure. Are we gonna get like Berserker debut, or he's just coming in and absolutely slapping everybody what?
I said, I'm like, I am not going crazy on these trains anymore until I see them actually perform.
I want to
well
jump on the
LCS.
train and get excited, and then if the train sucks, I'm gonna get off.
It's also tough though, because I feel like for all of these teams we've seen so far, there's a little asterisk with their performance because lane swaps are still a thing, right?
Yeah.
And especially with top lane, right? Like game one, you have to blind pick, so it's like Cassante, and you're gonna get countered, whether that's Poppy, whether that's Vayne, whether that's Alawi, just some crazy unplayable matchup, and then maybe there's a lane swap and you're 3 levels down in the entire game.
Yeah,
it's super tough to say. So too small sample size to make any definitive reads for me.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just the first thoughts on the debut. Kobe, how you feeling about NRG?
Terrible. I'm off the train. You talking about getting off trains?
You had them. Where did you have them? Third.
Yeah, third. Yeah. And it's beyond just that was a bad series. It's because
they got slammed.
It's because it also is at the beginning where I was like, part of the reason I'm going to put them high is because a lot of the other teams are going to start slow, but NRG, they seemingly
start even slower.
They were like, off season was really good. We're got some really good practice. There's so much change, and I was like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna get back in there. I'm gonna buy low because their stocks are really low.
Yeah.
I'm gonna buy real low, and then I'll be
sell
there.
Lower. Buy low, sell lower.
Yeah, I'll be there for the peak. I'll be there when they run it up to the moon, and it's the opposite.
Were you getting gaslit then? Because Contract said they were winning 1 scrim a day or whatever.
No, they were. They said on the show as well that was with Spica. They were like, they said it publicly now. They were the team that like 6-0'd Dignitas.
Oh yeah. But it was interesting because when Spica's like, we're winning maybe 1 scrim a day now, or maybe 2, and Contract's like, that's like us.
Yeah, that was after their first ones. I talked to them after their first couple of sets, and they were really good. And then not only
did they have the sample size.
Yes, not only did they start losing those ones, but the stage ones were quite bad. And 100 Thieves were quite good. Okay.
They were bad.
You are so into it. I also want to say that there were a lot of very impressive things from 100 Thieves, but one of the funny things is, with this matchup that is starting to become its own story, because of the way that they ended last split, where they picked Vhagar and Shaco against them in the regular season, and then they also beat them in playoffs. And then in the beginning of this season, they're like, oh, it's NRG again. We're gonna pick mid Ezreal and Zyra jungle and stuff, and it feels like 100 Thieves are like constantly styling on them.
I was going off. He
Yeah.
was 14, 1-13 in the series. Nice little 27 KDA.
Yeah, he got Player of the Week for that performance.
What was it, the 2v4 Quadra Baron steal, whatever it was on Ezreal?
The Barons were so horrendous from NRG. They were so bad. They all go to the back of the Baron pit, get hit by the Baron spikes.
And the Ezreal's just shooting them.
And so they're making the call to finish this Baron. I'm watching this, and FBI flashes out because the Renekton just charges at him, and the Baron spikes were about to hit. Yeah. And so he avoids the Baron spikes. But then that's their damage dealer. They have no damage on the Baron. It's like this. It's the most car crash-esque play as you're watching it all burn down, and they're trying to finish it so like pathetically still and getting it down to like 2,000 HP so that then they die while we've all been there, okay? We've all had that moment where it's a solo queue game and you're trying to decide, do we burn it down? Do we turn against them? Some of the people on your team decide to turn against, and they're trying to fight them off, and then other people are trying to burn it down.
The worst is, as the jungler, you turn, and then your team keeps hitting the Baron, and the other jungler
This is the worst.
No.
We saw the worst. We literally saw the worst. It's a quadra kill Baron steal for the enemy.
No. It's if your team stops hitting it at like 1,300 HP, it tilts me so hard. They're coming in for the steal. I'm like, okay, just burn it. Like, we can get it. And then your Draven starts hitting their jungler. I'm like, nah, dude, hit the fucking Baron. Like, oh my God. Nah, this happens so often.
That's funny. The Zyra game, the Nidalee game was tragic for Contracts, but it's interesting because I feel like in this matchup, a lot of times people talk about like, you just invade the Zyra. But I feel like if you are not having like a coordinated effort to like invade him on his first camps and screw him over, really, like the clear just becomes too fast. Like you get so fast on Zyra that it becomes really difficult to actually interrupt his clear whatsoever because everything's dying instantly. You could do like a 230 clear or whatever on Zyra.
Okay, not that fast.
Okay, it's like 240 or something. I think I've seen.
It's like 250.
I've seen videos that are definitely faster than that.
You have to get lucky with seeds.
Okay, well maybe it was like a super optimized one. Regardless, but like this champion, I feel like is hard to punish. And Contracts wasn't really able to do it. They didn't invade on the first side. Then Zyra just starts getting to the point where it's like every time he's coming over, the camps are dead, and Zyra just starts actually like killing every camp and then coming over and stealing your Raptors and stuff. Like the Contracts was getting pushed out of his jungle in Italy.
So I've got an idea. How about we do a thing this split where we can make week 1 adjustments to our tier lists?
Nope. You're locked in.
Bro, what?
I'm
How about we just make our tier list at the end of the split when we know where everyone's gonna be?
I'm probably over the course of history like the biggest supporter for this squad, but holy, if I could jump off the train, I would.
Well, okay, if Kobe's abandoning NRG, then I think there is no hope for NRG.
I would. Yeah, I don't have
Kobe's
a lot of.
number one NRG fan.
Could be.
But
I don't know. NRG, when they had their summer run last year, no one was rooting for them, right? Like they were the dark horse. So maybe doubting them's what they need.
There you
and
go.
From what I've seen, I'm doubting them for sure. They look.
If that's what they need, they're getting a lot of it because
they're just not looking good. I mean, just it's rough to say. It's also rough to see their games. It's just the stuff that happens looks tilted. It doesn't look like they made a good decision and something just went wrong. It just seems like they're kind of lost and doing random stuff and then losing everything. So
meanwhile, though. 100 Thieves. We spent the whole time talking about the NRG side.
We're talking about quit popped off.
100 Thieves. They look so good again.
Yep.
And this was the most exciting story from spring. Was like, oh my God, this team that everyone underestimated. Which, by the way, almost everybody did underestimate them again.
I had them 4th. I don't know if you
coming in
still underestimating.
I think that's pretty fair.
Yeah.
That's pretty strong. But coming in here for summer, I was pretty convinced that it was going to be much more difficult. But especially when you come in and you're embracing other, which are still off meta, even though these are strong picks. If you're going to be the ones on the forefront where you're grabbing up the Ezreal mid and you're grabbing up the Zyra and you're confidently playing out these games and slamming with them, it makes me like really excited once again for like, you know, summer, you know, the part 2 for this 100 Thieves lineup, right? This is still a very like rookie laden roster that I feel like has a lot of hype behind them. You know, snipers get better and better. Meech, I thought their bottom lane, Meech and Ayla absolutely trounced the bottom lane. So I just think that it's like restart some 100 Thieves hype.
It was also cool on pros. They talked about when they were talking about Ezreal a little bit, and Raz's like, "Oh yeah, and Ezreal mid," and they're all like, "Nah, that's just like a quid thing," you know? Like it's like, oh, when you have those champions, I feel like when you have someone on your team and he's the only guy who can play that thing, I feel like it is really advantageous, especially when you can actually bring it out and get a win on stage with it, because then people have to start worrying about it. You know, we've had times throughout the fast where it's like, if you can even start drawing bans on these random niche picks that you just like to play that are working for you, it can really free you up to get some big draft advantages.
Especially with a pick like Ezreal mid, where, you know, the meta so far seems to be you want to play one of these really fast-clicking AP junglers, so having an AD mid helps a lot with that. The premier ones have been Corki Triss so far, but if you have another one you can put into your team, that just helps a lot, as well as being a flex pick, because, you know, they pick Ezreal early. Is that going mid or AD? I don't know. You kind of have to respect both options. So, definitely a really solid tool for draft.
So let's talk about Immortals Shopify. Shopify got absolutely clobbered, and it's pretty rough start to the season. It is only one series, but it's a pretty rough start to the season when these are the two teams that basically everyone had power ranked at the bottom. You get to play the other team that's supposed to be your like competitor, or your team that's you're supposed to be competitive with, and they got absolutely blasted, it felt like.
They certainly did get blasted, and it's like you're saying, if you're starting at the bottom and you're playing against the other bottom team, and then you just go further down, then I just feel so bad for Shopify. They can do kind of the cope take, though, which I think is kind of fair, where it feels like the draft was super troll. This is the one that we talked about earlier, where we took that little break and we're like, hold on, the salty run back. This is one of the like worst salty run backs that I've seen in a while. And it was giving over the Skarner first pick again because they wanted to pick the Rumble into it for the strong lane. But this looked really rough beyond the picks. That's why I say it's like a cope take, because both it was, I felt like, bad draft, but also they were completely outclassed the entire time, absolutely stomped by Immortals. And we were coming into the day referring to Immortals being scrim gods and seeing if this was going to be the split where we get to see it on stage and they finally have their time in the sun, where they've been getting so much credit from all the other LCS teams for being so good at scrims. And then are we going to see it on stage? And then this was kind of just like, oh my, they slapped them so hard and they look, Shopify looks so bad that I'm not sure like how we give them full credit to Immortals, but they didn't seem like.
You don't know how much it means.
Yeah, I don't know how much it means, because like there was no stress at all this entire series for them. Like this felt like so calm the entire time.
Yeah.
I
Very
think
good look though.
Yeah, I mean, I think the drafts were a huge part of it for sure. Don't want to take too much credit away from them. Obviously they played well in those games, but it was interesting to see Immortals was like one of the only teams sort of like veering off from this AD mid AP jungler thing. They were playing Xinjiao or Rek'Sai, which like I kind of got to root for those. I like seeing champs I play get picked, so that was cool. But yeah, I guess for Shopify you just say Coach Scap GG's and you go again.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. I don't know. I didn't really have that much faith in Shopify. I think I had them last, and I guess you guys had them second last. Huge difference. But my concern for them is just going to be, I guess like who's kind of the secondary threat, right? It feels like it's B-Boy versus the world a little bit. Insanity had a pretty rough split in spring. You're bringing in a new jungler, Fake God. I think most people are looking at as like he was the weakest top laner in the league in spring as well. So it's tough. I mean, they need to have people, I think, stepping up, and they need to have people showing that they can be a threat and can be, a kind of a big carry. And that's going to be the question of where that comes from. Tomio, I think, is a talented player, and it'll be interesting to see, how he kind of adjusts over these next couple of weeks. Because he was talking a lot about, again, on pros, it's fun to watch if you want to listen to some of these junglers. But one of the things that he was saying is like when he was asked basically on the difference between NACL and LCS, and he feels like in NACL you could be down 5K, but you still feel like you can win. Like there is that chance of, but like someone's going to mess up, and I just have to be there when they mess up. And he was saying in LCS, feels like you get behind, and it's just like, well, that's that. Like,
yeah, he said in NACL there's like 3 or 4 enters usually.
Yeah.
You can kind of like pick and choose.
Yeah.
But people aren't giving you those openings in the LCS.
You get behind, and he's like, well, it was hopeless. And they're like, bro, you played one series of LCS.
Yeah, it was like, there's nothing we could do. But honestly, in a lot of these situations, you're looking at it like, well, there's not many options for him in particular too, as a jungler in this scenario, like to be able to play that out.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of that comes down to draft too, right? You're playing these like
Corki,
teams
Rumble, Nidalee,
yeah,
Kalista.
You don't have very much CC. They've got, who are you picking? The Skarner or the Nautilus, right? Like it's just games like that are very hard to play, especially if you fall behind because your comm just doesn't have the tools. As soon as you are in a situation in pro play where even if the other team walks into you camping and you can't win that fight, it's kind of doomed. You have to start doing really creative things, and that's not really something that most teams can pull off. So it's tough.
Yeah. Immortals, though, really good start to the season for them. Tactical, I thought, had a really good series. He was looking good. And I've always kind of had some faith in Tactical as far as, like, he can be a carry threat. I know we've shown his stats a number of times, throughout last split as well, where it's basically like Immortals basically only wins if Tactical's ahead, And I think, if they can get him in good positions and he can get consistent, then maybe this team can start to translate some of the success that they have in
Mask's Hui also was doing a lot of work, and because the Hui was such a big threat, like he often got focused in the team fights, and so it just felt like Tactical in so many of these was free the entire time, especially the Zeri one where they have the Zeri fight in the top river, and they pull off a 4v5. It was brutal to watch some of these.
Yep, but good start for them. Something else we can talk about is the LCS Finals location got announced. It's going to be in the YouTube Theater here in LA, and obviously a lot of people pretty disappointed that it is going to be in LA because there's lots of fans across the country and Canada and different places, and year round it is going to be mostly in LA, right? It's in the LCS studio, so people are obviously pretty disappointed that they're not going to have an opportunity for it to be on the East Coast or in Canada. And like I can definitely empathize with that. Growing up in Canada and being big into esports, there's like no events in Canada almost ever. It is really, really rare. And then when one comes and it like feels really good, like the Toronto one, I've been wanting to go back to Toronto since 2016, like so bad, because that was like definitely I'm biased, it's close to home, but it was an amazing event. And then it was supposed to be Toronto for Worlds, and that got canceled as well, which was also a super big bummer because of COVID, and I think it was visa issues and stuff like that. So I can definitely understand the frustration. The one thing I guess to think about a little bit is that generally there aren't the big LCS events don't happen in LA. So because this is the last like LCS finals, that's a roadshow. I know part of the reason that I was told that they want to have it here is that there hasn't really been those big events in LA for LCS fans who are loyal and come to the studio all the time. So it's kind of giving them an opportunity. There was the one at the Greek Theater, obviously, but then that was during COVID, so there was no fans. So this is kind of, I think, a chance maybe to kind of give back to some of the fans who are always coming week after week and have them have that kind of cool experience to go to one of the big road shows. But I fully get it. I mean, I would be really disappointed if I lived in New York or whatever, and you're like, oh, okay, surely it's going to come to the East Coast, and then it's like, oh, it's in LA again.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of big cities that haven't gotten any, so I understand why people are mad because I don't think you're gonna win over anybody. Because they can also cite that LA has also had Worlds events.
We don't get a lot of those either, though, in North America.
Which are pretty big. So, yeah. Personally, though, as far as the actual selection of the YouTube theater, I saw people critiquing the size of it. I mean, the location is one thing, but like I've actually been to the YouTube theater. Personally, I actually really like the venue, and it's like it feels very energetic. It feels like pretty packed when you're in there, and I think it'll obviously be easier to actually pack and sell out every seat. So.
Yeah, and hopefully it does sell out and it's an awesome finals, and like I'm excited for it. I also have really good memories of the Miami one, which was even smaller than this, significantly smaller. I think that was a really fun event. I think you're smiling because I think you got pounded in the finals in that one.
Why are all your best memories finals that I lost? Like Toronto, Miami, like is there something you need to tell me?
I forgot that you lost in the Toronto one too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Sorry, bro.
Praying on his downfall.
The Miami one was a cool venue though, but it was small, and fans were frustrated about that too, right? Because that was like there was a lot more fans that wanted to go than could because of the tickets. But it was an interesting venue. It was unique.
I mean, people are always going to be frustrated if like they can't
go
to an event. Like I completely understand the outcry from people for it being in LA again, and not much else.
And hopefully when we do one next, I guess it'll be a conference finals roadshow or whatever.
It'll be an America's. I don't know what the exact branding,
I don't know what the nomenclature
branding is going to be, but it's going to be like that America's thing. So hopefully those are super cool.
Yeah.
And we can have
and hopefully it'll be in some various locations and stuff like that. So fans.
I would imagine that it like moves between north and south.
Yeah, that's what I would assume. And man, it's actually this kind of blew my mind. I saw some posts on Twitter, and it was talking about how few international events have been in North America. There has only been one. They said it was one in the last going on 9 years now that have been in North America. That blew my mind.
It doesn't blow my mind because the time zone is the worst for the rest of the world.
I get it, but like
but it's the best for me.
Exactly.
True.
It doesn't blow my mind that's the decision. It just I guess in my head we had more than that.
Was that 2016 Worlds?
Yeah, that's
because 2016 Worlds was here.
Yep.
Yeah. Was that really it? Huh.
It's like since then, right? There's.
I mean, we had like
we had so it's after that there had been the one that was in 2020 or whatever it was. That's the most recent one. But like from now to I guess they're counting like right after the 2016 Worlds one. So like 2017 it was.
Yeah,
like,
if you start the counter right before or right after there was one, that's when you get
that's how we do stats.
Yeah, you get the biggest reaction.
Always do that, right? Exactly. Like but I mean still it just had I was like oh. Because back in the day, it felt more like it was kind of that rotation through. But I get it. And North America's a bad time zone for everyone else. But selfishly, it is nice to have them here. They're a lot of fun. All right. Aurora also just got revealed. And our boy Meteos has the inside scoop on it. You got to actually try it out.
Yeah, I got to do a playtest with Aurora. And she looks pretty cool. I definitely feel for anyone who plays top lane because lately we've had this influx of TF Vayne top, and I think she's gonna fit right in with a crazy lane bully.
That.
Yeah, that you really don't want to play melee into. She's this little bunny girl. It's what we've been missing on the Rift, a nice bunny girl.
Spirit World bunny girl. Can you explain? How about you go through the kit, like kind of quickly?
Yeah. So she's I'm timed. Okay, so she's a ranged, high mobility, like kind of assassin mage. She doesn't have any hard CC, so that's kind of her downside. So her passive, it's a 3-hit passive, like we've seen a lot in League. Each time you proc it, you get these little spirits that follow you, and then for each spirit you have following you, it gives you a heal over time and a move speed buff. So basically, if you're top lane and you have an extended fight with her, she'll get all these spirits, just be really fast, heal a lot, and you're probably not winning that. Her Q, it's a skill shot that goes through minions. It tags everything it hits, including champs, and then you can reactivate it to like remove all those tags and pull them toward you, kind of like a Xayah E ability. And each of those that pulls through someone can trigger the passive as well. So you can if someone's like in a wave, you can Q through them and then rip everything back through them and trigger your passive.
So you'll be fast a lot.
Yeah, she's really fast. Her
How long
W.
do the spirits last?
Not.
It's like
It's
like
not a
couple
really short amount of
seconds,
time,
or-
but it's not a super long time
Is it
either.
kind of like Lilia passive, where you can kind of keep like if you play it well, you can kind of keep it
Yeah.
up the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, if you're fighting an enemy champion, you'll
You
keep,
just like keep it
you'll
up.
keep having it. Her W is a little hop that turns her invisible that resets on kills.
Love
Little bunny hop?
invisibility.
Yeah, a little bunny hop.
Love invisibility.
Yep. Then her E is a line nuke, kind of like a Graves ult that sends her backwards when she uses it, and it's like a really big slow, briefly for wherever you hit. So her base kit's actually not that complicated by modern champion standards. Her ult is the crazy one where the way it works is it's kind of like a big, almost Crowstorm-esque way you cast it, where she jumps into an area and then she makes this massive circle, and it has a little arming time. And once it's armed, it's sort of like a Camille ult where nobody can leave it. It does a nuke when you initially cast it, and if she walks to the edge of the circle, she'll appear on the other side of the circle. So it's like you can do some crazy stuff with that, like blinking back and forth
Hop
through the circle.
backwards through the edge and then go to the
Yeah,
other
like you can use
side
your
and
E
then-
to launch you backwards, appear
Yeah.
on the other side. You can use it to like use your Q2 to rip the spirits or curses.
Some Alice in Wonderland stuff here mixed in.
Yeah, and you can keep doing it as long as it lasts. So it's
This
a
sounds
really
like such a nightmare for melee champions. Like,
Oh, yeah.
she's just appearing back and forth on opposite sides of the circle. She's jumping backwards, which has a massive slow. She's turning invisible and like juking you out while stacking something that's giving her move speed and passive healing.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I started with she's you like landing against Vayne. Well, we've got something even better. I definitely see her as being like a split push kind of champion, and then
Is she really squishy? Is that like the downside?
think-
Because
I think,
she has
yeah.
a lot of mobility, invis, all this stuff. Feels like it's got to be one of those champions where if you CC it, it's got to die.
Yeah, I think her weaknesses are meant to be she doesn't have like crazy one-shot you burst. It takes a little bit. She has to like go through rotations of spells. I think she's kind of like a Lichbane champion. And then I think ideally if you get on her and just burst her down really quickly before she can stack up all of her spirits, then she should be
How much
vulnerable
is
in
the
that way.
healing? Like, what kind of healing are we talking about? Because like I know like I just watched the little tiny clips on Twitter of like you hit the Q, it gives you a spirit which heals you. But I'm like, is this a 10 heal per second? Is this like it's healing you for a couple hundred? Is this like an Olaf with Conqueror stacked where you can't move her HP?
The numbers were a little bit in flux when I did the playtest, so I don't know exactly where they're going to land when she's shipped, but it was a pretty sizable heal. If you got 4+ spirits on you, then it was ticking for 20, like you would.
So for like a tank, you would really struggle to like out DPS the sustain.
Yeah. I don't think you would.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. I just watched the quick little clips that were on Twitter. It was a couple seconds for each ability. I think it looks fun. I wanted to try it. I don't know that I want to play against it, but I want to try it.
It looks really. It's a modern day league champion, fun to play, and don't worry about playing against it.
This ulti looks so annoying. I'm like watching a video right now, and then like enemies that try and go out of it, you also get like a giant slow and take damage. And
And it pushes you back in.
ping-pongs back.
So what you can do is if you can flash over it to get out. It's not
Okay.
like Camille where it perma-locks you in. Also, it has that arming time where like the center circle expands, and
Okay.
it doesn't lock you until that finishes. So if you have flash or whatever, you're probably not going to get totally jailed, but
so even after it's armed, if you flash over just the
Yeah.
edge, then
Yeah.
you don't take the damage.
yeah, you can get out if you
What
flash over. the edge.
about if enemies are bumping you into the side? Is that proccing the damage? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like I'm playing Janna and you're
assume
playing
so.
this champion, and you like lock them in, and then I tornado them, and then everyone. And I'm just like,
I'm not
cheat.
sure. I haven't seen that one.
Okay, because to me, I'm like, if it does significant damage, if it's not just like 100, if it actually does a lot of damage, that seems kind of crazy. Poppy's tackling you into it and then ulting you into it.
Yeah, I mean that definitely could be something to see.
Yeah.
Freaking bounce house.
Exactly,
You're
it does
stuck.
sound
You're
like
stuck
bounce house.
inside this.
Or like Zach all knocking everyone and stuff. It sounds interesting. Definitely looks cool. Excited to see when the champion comes out to try it out. That's always a lot of fun. But I think that pretty much does it. Unless there's anything else you guys want to touch on.
I feel like this champ's gonna deliver a lot of frustrating moments. Whenever you have dashes plus extra move speed plus invisibility.
She doesn't have crazy range, which is why when I first saw her, I know she's designed to be a mid laner, but Skarner was designed to be a jungler. Where the champion is designed to go doesn't always end up with where they go. So she does kind of struggle into the longer range champions. So
it sounds like you want to play against.
I don't think you want to play
against
melee
Ornn. You don't want to play against Hui.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what I mean, based on what you're saying. That's really what it sounds like. But it'll be interesting to see when it does come out. But that's going to wrap it up for us here on The Dive, driven by Kia. Remember, if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode of The Dive. You can also check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any podcast platform that you like. Maybe if you make one, it'll disappear there. Make sure you send us questions on Twitter with the hashtag TheDiveLOL. We're going to be doing one of those kind of social episodes during the down weeks in a couple weeks. We got a couple more weeks LCS, then we're on break, and then we'll be doing those during that.
You can also always send in Twitter questions.
You can.
I mean, we used
No one can stop you.
We used to have a Twitter section where we would do it and include it in every
There you
episode.
go. So if you send a question, Kobe guarantees your question will be in the next episode. And if not, you can take it up with him. Week 2 of the LCS is going to be starting Saturday, June 22nd at 1 p.m. Pacific. Be sure to tune in. Thanks for watching.